Sorry, that intro is so loud and obnoxious every time.
I
Welcome to
love
the
it.
Nostalgia Train Book Club. Today we're going to be discussing our June pick, which was Inkheart by Cornelia Funke. So, yeah, I'm the host of this crazy train, Violet of the channel Writing Violet, and I have a great crew of co-hosts along the ride with me,
Oh,
as
really?
per
Great.
usual. I always ask my co-hosts when they introduce themselves to say their experience with the book if they're a new reader or a rereader, as well as yeah, that's it. That's actually there was no as well. I don't know why I said that.
As well, and that's it.
Yeah, that's it. So I don't actually remember ever hearing about Inkheart until the movie came out, and then I never saw the movie. It was just like a thing that I'd heard the name of. So and then when I started the book club and was doing research on like popular YA middle grade books, this is one that kept coming up. And when I put it on the forum for people to vote for books we're going to read, it got the most picks out of every book on the forum. So this was the audience request pick. And yeah, I was a new reader to it. And I'll let Michael introduce himself.
Oh, sure. Hi, I'm Michael. I do the AuthorTube streams, and yeah, I'm new to Inkheart. I mean, in the month, I bought it and I've read it and enjoyed it. So I'm excited to talk about it and
Had you
discuss it
heard
and
of the
everything.
book before, Michael?
No, not really. Not really.
It's wild to me.
Sorry.
Take
Danny?
it away, Danny.
I am Danny of channel Somber Honey, where I theoretically make videos. Haven't been doing that, but that's fine. I am not new to Inkheart. As you can see, my book is extremely beat up, although the corners are ripped and everything. I bought this, I was probably like 8 years old, so like 2006, 2007-ish. And my family went to this like street fair that was happening a couple towns away from where we live, and there was a secondhand bookstore that was part of this. And I found this book, and it seemed really interesting. And it was the first book that I ever bought with my own money. And then I loved it so much that the very next year I went back to that store during the same street fair, and I bought the sequel.
Oh,
And I've read it 7, 8 times by now. It's one of my favorite books of all time and will forever hold a special place in my heart. So I was very excited when it showed up on the roster for the Nostalgia Train Book Club.
Wow, that story, I feel like it sort of weirdly fits with the vibe of the book.
yeah, yeah.
Marta?
What did the bookstore owner look like?
I don't know. I do remember that it was the kind of bookstore that had a cat. Like there was a cat sleeping in the window, so you know it was a good one. The books were like stacked floor to ceiling.
Oh, right, yeah.
Well, I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to trump Daniel's very cute story, but I'm gonna try. Well, first of all, I'm Marta from the channel Marta. And I make videos every second Wednesday. I also had read Inkheart before. I picked it up, I can't remember how old I was, but probably around 12, maybe 13. And I have my copy over here. It doesn't look quite as well loved as Danny's one, but I have definitely read it at least 3 times, now 4. And while I didn't pick this up at a second-hand bookshop, I do remember that this was actually my pick for in school when we had to do this reading out loud competition. And I picked the first chapter of this and read it out loud and like got shortlisted from my class, so I had to do it in front of the entire school, which I'd forgotten about until I started rereading this, and I realized that I'd basically memorized the first chapter and I still remembered some of the lines off by heart. So that's
so
my fun
cute.
story.
Wow, a reading out loud challenge, Marta. That's also eerily like
Right?
on
Like,
theme.
that fits so well.
No cats
Yeah.
though.
I was posting everywhere because I forgot to do that pre-stream. Hi, I'm writing Mom Samantha L. Nassett, and I bought the book yesterday and read it for the first time. I vaguely knew of Inkheart, but as with every popular book series, I did not read it when they first came out. I'm always very late to that. Uh, and my brain just died. But yeah, so I knew about it, and I remember seeing the movie. Don't ask me anything about the movie. I do not remember anything about it. I just know
The
that I saw
movie's
it
not that
because
good anyway.
it had Brendan Fraser, so I
Yeah,
watched.
that's the redeeming quality. Him and Paul Bettany.
I enjoyed. Brandon Fraser's been one of my favorite actors since I was a kid, but I do vaguely recall that because I started reading the book, and from everything I heard the book, I was like, I don't remember any of this from the movie at all. Maybe who even did he play? So that was a fun side trip there, but yeah. And on my channel, I talk about writer things, parent things, writer parent things. I host live streams. I actually kind of do stuff like this with Let's Talks. Next week, we'll be doing a Let's Talk about the 13th Year Mermaid movie.
Oh, interesting.
Just unlocked a memory I didn't remember.
Which is also kind of nostalgic. So
Very on brand. What was I going to say? I had words that I was going to say. Oh yeah, I loved the book so much, so that I wanted to go watch the movie afterwards, and it was like unwatchable to me. I kept like, okay, I'll just fast forward a little bit, and then I tried to
Oh.
watch a little bit more, then fast forward a
kinda
little bit
wanted-
more.
I wanted to rewatch it like later today just to see. I might still and just pretend it's a different thing because I do that sometimes.
Yeah, I think
Like, this
sometimes
has
it's
nothing to
better
do
to
with
watch
the
the
book,
movie
it's
first
fine.
and then read the book, because then the movie's always a letdown in comparison. So
Right.
I don't know.
I take
Um,
it the same way like manga and anime adaptations, where it's like these are two separate things.
Yeah, I
So
think sometimes you have to think of adaptations like that. So Danny, you said you continued the series. Marta, did you continue the series?
Yeah, I've also read all three of them.
Okay.
Actually, Danny, have you read three of them? You just said the one sequel earlier.
Well, that's because that's the one that I bought from the same store. I don't remember when I got the third one, but I know I haven't read the third one as much as I've read the first two. I think I've only read that one like twice, maybe 3 times.
Really, the second and the third were my favorite.
Really? Interesting.
Well,
the first
at
is
this
by far my
point,
favorite.
I'm gonna put up the spoilers banner, and I'm gonna ask you to try not to spoil the rest of the trilogy. So
Oh.
we could spoil book one as much as we want because the people have been warned. There is a banner.
Danny, what, do you have an Instagram handle? Danny, do
Sorry?
you have
For
Instagram?
me, yes, Somber Honey.
Okay, thank
I
you.
think there's a period between the two words. I don't remember.
I found you. It's fine.
I didn't hear that you were addressing me. I just heard the second half of your sentence.
You're fine.
Michael said hello in the chat before he came backstage, as per usual. Crystal wished a happy time zone, but showing some support, even though she did not read Inkheart. And Cool Gamer also popped in with a hi. I have discussion topics, and I think I was a little bit wondering where we should start, but I kind of want to start with this topic of metafiction in a book about books, just because it is so. I don't know. Like, I did not know at all really what this book was about. I thought going into it that they were going to like travel inside of the storybook world or hop between different books. And there was like I was a good chunk into reading before I realized, oh, they're never going to go into the book. So
That's kind of what I thought. Like, I thought her dad was gonna speak them into the book, and they were gonna run away from Capricorn by running through different stories. But I think that was because I got that mixed. I think I got the Inkheart movie mixed up with another movie that did that when I was a kid. Page
yeah,
Master?
same. I think I also mixed this up with the Page Masters or whatever that movie was.
Oh.
So that was that. Does anybody have any thoughts about the very meta nature of this entire book because it was, yeah, it's a book about books and sort of almost a love letter to stories. And
I absolutely love metafiction and fourth wall breaking. It's it's one of those things where it's like it depends on execution, but I find that more often than not, it's executed well than poorly, and it's just great because it gives you like when you're involved in like the fandom or creating the medium that the metafiction is about, then it's you can relate to it on like both sides. It's like from the reader perspective, it's like, oh yeah, I really relate to these readers and these things. And then as from an author perspective, you're like, what if it was my book? What if it was my character? Would I want to meet my character? I don't think I would be as excited as the author to meet my villains. I'd be like, sir, there is a difference between putting them on page and seeing them in front of your face, which the author eventually figures out. But at first, he's just like, no, I'm like, sir, they're not going to thank you for existing.
that's
Yeah.
a really good point, Sam. Because like we're all writers here, so like we even have like another sort of layer in the metaverse of it all than just a casual reader. We're readers and writers, so.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have anything?
I guess sort of bouncing off the reading it as a writer idea, I found the actual writer of the book really interesting this time round, and I think when I read this as a younger person, I didn't pay as much attention to him, but it was just really interesting seeing how he went about writing the new ending, just because of how many attempts he went through it, and it just made me wonder if that's how the actual author normally writes, if that's based on herself, which I guess sort of relates to the metafiction aspect as well.
I
Yeah.
thought about that.
You would think so, right?
I
You'd
like that
think.
they showed multiple drafts because I feel like a lot of times writers, like in stories, get it like
Yeah.
they type it out on a typewriter and pull it off perfectly. Like,
Yeah.
I find more often it's like writers in movies are very unrealistic, like ever, because it's always like their first draft. Or they've had writer's block, but now their writer's block is gone and their first draft is the bestseller and it's amazing or something.
Yeah.
But then, like in books, I assume the difference is that writers are writing writers in books, and so they normally struggle a little bit more, or have a couple first drafts, or their first draft like goes to like their editor or something, or their agent. So, for me, that's when I heard it in Inkheart, I was like, yeah, that's on par for it, and then when I see it in a movie, I'm like, but no, but that's not how it works.
Also, in movies, writers are portrayed as making money, which is just ridiculous.
well, I don't even know what that is. Um, yeah, I think, yeah, writers in movies, a lot of times I always see the trope of like, they have writer's block and it's always like, oh, now they write about the thing in their real life and that's what unblocks it. It's always that, like, it's so annoying. And it was kind of nice in this story that even though it was what was going on in his real life, he was up against his own characters. He was still being creative and not like, I don't know.
I like how he took there was a character a paradigm shift of sorts, because at first they're talking to him about his characters and stuff, and he's talking about his characters as if they are completely purely fictional characters because they're supposed to be. And so he's like, yeah, I killed Dustfinger, and um and this is how I killed him and everything. And they're like, but why? And he's like, because it added drama and it was a very nice way to go. But then she's all like, okay, well, write the shadow killing Capricorn. And he's like, no, hold on, wait. We can't just mass murder everybody. Hold on, I gotta think about this.
Yeah, he definitely had some like killing the darlings, but also like was very much into his own ego of, oh, this was a cool character and a cool plot point. And it was also cool to see him hype himself up about parts of his story and
Yeah,
characters
it was
too.
really funny.
I think Fenoglio might be my favorite character.
I was so happy when he got introduced because like when they're like, oh, we're gonna go to the author, it was like a mind blown moment. Like, oh my god, I didn't even think about that as a possibility. Like,
I forgot that happened in this book. I went into this remembering him and being like, oh, I love Fenolio. I really wish we could meet him in this book because I'm an idiot and thought he was introduced in the second book. And then I got to that part and I'm like, hold up, wait a minute, this happens here?
hi.
Like, I had
Yeah,
all
he's
the
the
events out of
wild
order.
before he comes in, but then he's like a main player in the story.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah, and the book I guess is just long enough that it kind of feels like he's there for. Well, he is there for a good part of the story,
Yeah.
but he doesn't come in also until a good part of the story's passed.
I want to say about 60-70%.
Yeah,
Like,
it was a
according to the
while in.
audiobook.
Right.
And I also liked that like some of his characters like didn't believe he was the author.
Like, bruh, no.
Well, yeah,
I like-
because all the authors are old dead men.
I like
we-
some of the like kind of some meta shade and stuff that happens sometimes, or just like commentary on writing and stuff. Like
Yeah.
when they're like, oh no, all authors are like dead people who wrote stories like long time ago. Authors don't exist. And then like there's also the part where, oh, I just had it, and then I noticed the music, and I'm
Sorry, I just wanted to.
oh, you're fine. No, it's
Look what you've done, Violet.
I'm just having a little bit of brain fog, so just a little bit of attention grabbing. I'll remember it in a sec.
Not bad.
Y'all continue.
I really
it-
liked. Pretty good.
Yeah, go.
I really like when Mo is talking about how he's not a writer. He couldn't write words, and he knows that anything he tried to write wouldn't work with his like magic to speak them aloud. But then Maggie, when she goes through this whole thing, like her one thought is like, I want to be able to write the words too. Like, I found that so inspiring as a little kid when I read this, because I had already known I wanted to write by the time I found this book, and this just kind of like hit all the right points of telling me like, yeah, you should do this thing because look at all the magic there is in books. And it just, I got to that part of in this reread and I'm like, oh, childhood Danny is thriving right now.
There you go.
Oh yeah, I kind of wish I had read this when I was a kid, because that would have been my jam. But I still really like. I'm going to get the rest of the series now, and I've added it to my kids like bedtime. Like, I have a tag on my Libro for kid bedtime books, and I've put it in there for them to choose from.
Aw.
Awesome.
I remembered. I like that the author I cannot remember his name. His name was so close to Fabio to me that my dyslexia refuses to latch on to his actual name.
Hold on, I have the character list.
Fenolio.
Fenolio. Yeah.
Fenolio. But yeah, when Fenolio mentioned, did I say that? Anyway, when he mentions that he's like, oh, I can prove I'm the author because I know things about them that a reader wouldn't know, because authors don't add everything into a book, because readers don't need to know everything. And I'm like, I don't know that I've ever seen that said in a piece of like media or in fiction and stuff, because like that's very true. And I really enjoyed that was there. I did have a slight moment of, but none of the bad guys can read, so how would they know what is and isn't in the book? But it's okay.
Wait.
I liked that was in there so much. I'm like, no, it's fine.
Yeah, and they can't get driver's licenses either because they can't pass the driver's
They were
tests.
driving! But Master and Cockerel, they drove the car. So
Yeah,
And
but they can
they had the
drive, but they
police
don't
in
have a
their pocket,
license, I
it's
think
fine.
they said.
It took me a minute to like realize what time period this was set in, because I was like, is this modern times, like when it was published, or is this like taking place like hundreds of years ago? And then there's like a part where she's like on her mobile phone. I was like, oh, okay, they have phones. Okay, it's not that old. Like, I didn't know, like, because there's a timeless quality about it. Like that
Yes.
if they would have like left out that cell phone thing or a couple little things like that.
Yeah.
I like all the little this isn't meta, but I just like all the little foreshadowings. Like when Dust Fingers is like, oh, you were born in the wrong story. And she's like, you mean the wrong century? He's like, yeah, that too. Like little stuff like that to let you like figure it out before they like say it.
Does anybody else have anything to say on this topic? Otherwise, I will pull up the next banner.
Cue
Okay.
banner.
Well, I'll just point out that
Oh,
the book is Inkheart, right?
yes.
But the book is also Inkheart, right?
Confusing. Yes, correct.
Like an Inkheart in an Inkheart.
It reminded me of when the book club did Cirque du Freak, that the author in real life is Darren Chan and the character is Darren Chan. So it's like
Yeah.
a little bit like messing with you. So it's
I
like
like
sometimes how do we talk about Inkheart, the book from Cornelia, versus the Inkheart, the book from Fenolio?
I will say I really like the double title because it like worked so well for me because Inkheart by Cornelia is about these characters who came out of a novel called Inkheart and they're like trying to get that one book, and a lot of the, not the main plot, but like a big part of the plot is about that book. But then in the actual book itself, he's like, "Yeah, I titled it Inkheart because of the main character of the book," and I was like, "I didn't expect this double level here."
Yeah.
Oh
I,
yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
So even the book, like Cornelia Funke's book, is written or is titled after the antagonist.
Oh, wait, sorry, I'm gonna pull back the meta banner. It's actually funny because I hadn't read the book and I asked like on Discord, oh, what should be the symbol of the book? And people said the pen. And I was like, okay, ink, a pen, it makes sense. And I was like, actually, the black heart emoji might have been better.
There
fair.
you go.
But it
Yeah.
doesn't show up on the dark mode Discord, so
Oh yeah, not well.
so I was like, now we're leaving it at the pen. Anyways, plot and pacing is one of our evergreen banners of discussion topics that I like to pull up for all of our book club picks.
Are you reusing your banners?
Yes, I have a folder called Book Club, and it's made my life much simpler
There-
to do these.
There are certain topics that are universal. Favorite character, least favorite character. I'm not pulling from my standard topics for my Let's Talks at the moment. No.
Like I said, I was really kind of blown away with the plot, and I also think it was quite well paced because it's a pretty thick book, but every time like things got comfortable, the tension was always slightly building, or like the one step forward, two steps back kind of situation. It was a minute ago that I read it, but it kept my attention without ever feeling like whiplash, which
Yeah, all the scenes have their room to breathe, but they don't drag on.
yeah.
I really like the way that they. Sorry.
No,
I'll
you
just
go first.
be quick. That they return to Capricorn's village. I really like that aspect because I
Yeah.
think that a lot of times writers hesitate to kind of like go back, like, oh no, is the reader going to be bored or
What's the
or
next
whatever.
big thing?
Yeah, like wanting to move on or something, but she had the courage to do that, and she did it really well, and I really liked that part.
I agree. I think it worked really well.
It's like
think-
Eleanor always trying to get out of the same place. It's like, oh no.
Oh my god, Eleanor, I love her. I just adore her.
Were you
So-
saying something, Sam?
I think the pacing worked really well because there's not just like a lot of times with big books like this that have so much going on and everything, it's like they have so many like plot threads, and it's like, oh well, how do you tie all the plot threads up? But this book's plot threads were all attached to a singular character, so you're following character arcs as opposed to like plot threads, and I think that it makes it not necessarily easier for the reader to stay engaged and to keep the pacing well balanced and everything, because even when you go to another plot thread, theoretically, as long as you like the character, you're still invested in that plot, and you're like, oh okay, so here we're gonna go, we're gonna find out what's going on with Eleanor now, so even though you don't know what's going on with everybody else. And it also helped to move time forward that the reader doesn't necessarily notice, because like when is it Maggie or Meggie?
Maggie.
Yeah, it is true. In the audiobook, it sounds like they're always saying Maggie.
Oh, really?
Okay, I just
Yes,
wanted to make
but
sure
it-
because I
but it is
wrote
yeah.
Maggie in all of my notes, but because she was at 1.8, she sometimes sounded like she was saying Maggie, and I'm like, is that just because I've sped you up? So
Yeah.
so Maggie, when Maggie and the author are in the cell together, right? You can't stay focused there for a very long time, but I noticed that Cornelia doesn't really do a lot of big time skips. Instead, she just goes to a different character,
Yeah.
and you're moving forward with their plot, and then like you come back and check in on Maggie, and then you go check other character, and like the celebration and everything was told from Dustfinger's point of view, and it like very quickly summarizes everything that he was doing. So the reader's like, where did Dustfinger go? And then he helps move the plot forward, and I think set up for a sequel, or at least it felt like it was set up for a sequel.
Yeah.
And
So
it
I
like
felt too.
very
Yeah.
nicely, but could have also just been self-contained, where it's like, okay, so this is, let your imagination figure out everything that's going to go, because this character is likely going to continue with this journey there. So it could have easily been a standalone or a sequel setup.
Yeah.
And so I just really liked how she handled the plot threads and the pacing and stuff, because a lot of times when I read like a big fantasy series or something and they have different plot threads and it's more plot based instead of character based, I quickly start to disengage with certain plot lines because like I just don't care. But like when they're character based, because I care about the character, I care about where the plot is going there.
I do not have it as a banner, but I think the cast of characters and sort of the ensemble cast of this story was so strong. Like, every character felt real to me, and I have like thoughts and feelings and like connections sort of to like everybody, which is like, I'm like very much a character reader. So to me, it really made the story how alive the characters felt.
Yes.
Like,
I
I
will
feel
also
like, yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just like Eleanor. Like when she's first introduced, like she's kind of like uptight and a little bit overbearing. But like the more time you spend with her, like she just is like has this weird charm about her that I
I
just
love
adore her. Like I don't know what to say.
She reminds me of so many old ladies I know.
Yeah.
In real life.
But part of I think is like me getting older. It's like, oh, I now relate to the old lady character.
I am Eleanor.
She has the greatest development in her character in the book, I think.
Yeah, she definitely does have a really nice
She has a nice arc.
growth. Yeah.
Yeah.
A character moment that I really enjoyed was like when I first heard about Capricorn. Like you've got Dustfinger and Capricorn and Flatface and like Silver Tongue, and it's like, okay, so some of these names, they're obviously a lot of them are code names, and so I'm trying to figure out who's got what code name, and I'm like, but what about Capricorn? Is it because he's a Capricorn? And then the author's like, he named himself Capricorn after his zodiac sign, and I was like.
I love it so much.
I
I have a banner just about Capricorn, but just pretend that this has plot, pacing, and character because we could also discuss that.
You can just sneak a new banner and no one will know.
Yeah. Sam, you know I can't like I can't type like live. It would be like,
I can't either.
I will just ramble on to disguise it. It's fine.
I can also, but like I do have a Capricorn banner, Capricorn in the Dark Lord archetype. I just actually read the second book in the On Writing and World Building series by Timothy Hickson, and Dark Lords was one of the topics. And I had already started reading Inkheart for the book club, and he always does like a spoiler banner at the beginning of each chapter, and Inkheart was one of the ones on there. I was like, what are the chances? So like when it came up like, you know, in italics, I like skipped that paragraph, and then when I finished the book, I came back and read it, and it just had like a Dark Lord a la Inkheart with the black, henchmen dressed in black, and that was all it said. I was like, really? I skipped it just for that. That's not even a spoiler. But I liked that Capricorn was like unabashedly just evil. Like a lot of times you see like morally gray villains these days. It's kind of like refreshing just to see just evil for the sake of evil.
Yes, I love that. I hate the general. This is related, but also it's a writer peeve of mine. I hate the advice that started circulating in the late 90s and has not died yet. In that, in order for a villain or a bad guy to be interesting, they have to have some sort of reason for being evil. And it's like, that's true, but then people will be like, yeah, so they can't be evil for evil's sake. And I'm like, but being evil for evil, that's a reason. Like greed, pride, that's power. Those are evil. That's evil for being evil's sake. And there's real world people that are like that. Why can't I make my fictional bad guy an asshole just because he's an asshole? And so I loved that was basically Capricorn. He was just like, yeah, no, I like money, I like power, I like doing whatever I want. Yeah, so I'm good where I am. And I was like, I loved this character. I would not be excited to meet this character, but I love reading him.
I also
wonder.
love how he was. Sorry, you go ahead,
Marta.
Michael.
No, Marta, you go.
I love how he was described as being a bit of a dragon because he just wanted the treasure for treasure's sake. He wasn't going to spend it.
Yeah.
It is a great description, isn't it?
The treasure hoarding, right?
What were you going to say, Michael?
I was just going to ask, would it be possible that we could classify Capricorn for personality as a psychopath? Like with all the like detachment and lack of emotions? I mean, it's just something to throw out there.
I don't necessarily think...
Sociopath, maybe.
Yes, socio, but not psycho. A psychopath is like when they're born with a disconnect, and he doesn't seem to have been born with it, but a sociopath is more like, this may get me in hot water with parents, but children are actually sociopathic. You have to teach them to be people. Like, you have to teach them to be empathetic sometimes.
Right.
They're born with the capacity for it, but if you don't like teach them how to channel it, they largely just they learn to not care and they learn to not give a fuck. And
I think also psychopaths will put themselves in sort of like high adrenaline danger situations where sociopaths won't. That's one of the other distinguishing factors, I think. Like living on the edge.
Yeah.
Speaking of teaching people to be people, can we talk about Capricorn's mother? Because I'm obsessed with her.
I wanted to talk about next.
is one of my favorite characters. I think she's fantastic.
So much. She oh my god. I was like, she was weirdly just this very proud villain mama. She's like, I love that my son has become a Dark Lord, and I too am a Dark Lord in my nice room for a servant lady. And I'm like, is she the real villain of the book? So like, I enjoyed her so much.
I loved the element of the fact that she was not known to be his mother, that it was like this secret. Like, that made it so, that was just like such a great little detail that it's not like, I don't know. I feel like it could have been out there, like, as like a writing decision. You could have just said, oh, everybody knew. But like the fact that it's like he wanted to almost be seen as like this being that didn't have parents, like more than earthly.
That's another reason I would lean more towards socio than psycho, because like psychopaths largely just don't care or about their parents one way or another. They're just like, yeah, they created me, whatever. Whereas sociopaths will usually either have attachment or resentment. Speaking very generally, and I am not a professional. This is just from because I am very in love with psychology. But
you're not a professional, Banner.
Yeah. But he seemed attached to his mom. He very much did not want anybody to know she was his mother, and I think because she was his weakness. And so he didn't want anybody to know his weakness, because that's what he did to other people. He understood how to control other people because he understands what it's like to love somebody and want to protect them. And for him, that's his mom. And so like I do felt that he loved his mom, because otherwise why would he treat her so well?
Sure.
Like
Yeah.
regardless,
In his
he
own
could have
way.
just got rid
In
of
his own way, I would definitely say
Yeah.
that.
comparatively to everybody else.
Well, that's
And-
true
yeah.
compared to everybody else.
And we don't know whose decision it was for her to be a servant lady, because like she brags about it. She's like, "Yeah, I got a nice room. I got nice stuff for a servant lady."
Yeah,
So
she's comfortable with the setup, the whole setup.
and it never on page it never says that he mistreats her or speaks poorly of her. And there are a couple times she speaks over him, which if anybody else even dares to challenge him, he has them severely punished. But with her, he's just like, meh.
I think like you could really compare to like Basta, who is like his number one guy who rides and dies for Capricorn, and like how Capricorn treats him in comparison.
Yeah.
It's like pretty stark contrast.
And like with Risa, you know, he's sitting there, he's like, "Oh man, it's a real shame that like I gotta get rid of her and stuff." And his mom's like, "Yes, you have to get rid of her. Stop it." And he's like, he just has this like yes mom moment. So that's I just really enjoy the very subtle characterization of their relationship, because I think it is really easy to like miss it and to assume that he's mistreating her the way he mistreats everybody else. But there's really no evidence that he does. And there's a lot of like evidence or moments that he actually respects her, and that we don't know whose idea it was for her to be the servant lady. But she's obviously like in charge of everything.
Yeah, she's very supportive of whatever he wants to do, like ride or die, his number one fan.
Yeah.
I have other banners, but do you guys have other thoughts on Capricorn, the Dark Lord archetype, or even any of the baddies in Capricorn's men and his whole crew?
I feel like Baster and Dustfinger were the morally gray villain anti-heroes that we're like more used to seeing now. So it was really fun to see them contrasted up against Capricorn, who is evil for evil's sake.
Yeah, that's true. They definitely had more, like, Dustfinger really kind of almost reminds me, like, yeah, this Jaime Lannister kind of like, I'm good, I'm bad again.
He's a survivalist, and that's all he needs. He's like true neutral. He's like, I will do what I need to survive.
I love Dustfinger. He's also one of my favorite characters of the whole book.
He's one of my favorites also.
He
I just actually maybe wanted to add, what's his name? Capricorn definitely does have, though, a lot of emotions, at least because of the scene when he's with Finoglio. And Finoglio is saying, you know, his thing. He's like, oh, you know, I created you. And he's talking. He's basically proving how he created him because of all the things that he knew about him. And he was kind of talking lowly so the others couldn't hear. And the rage that Capricorn had, but was, you know, not trying not to show and all that. So yeah, he's definitely got the emotions, you know. But he definitely.
You're talking about the scene when like Fenolio's like really trying to like get under his skin.
Yeah.
Like when he's like trying to be like, I can prove that I.
Yeah.
Because I feel like he tried a few times and Capricorn brushed him off, but then there was. It was a minute ago that I read the book, but like he definitely started to like hit a couple nerves.
He was like, at first he convinces Baster because of Baster's superstitious, and he's like, well, I'm your author, and if you kill me, you all die. And Baster's like, well, I don't want to take that risk. I'm gonna take you to the boss. And Capricorn's like, that's stupid nonsense. Just kill him. And Baster's like, okay, but. What if he is, and what if we do die?
And I loved having superstition as like a character flaw, and it was like it's so quirky.
But it was also Fenolio, Capricorn's.
And then Fenolio was like, so, like, I know things about you, and Capricorn was like, all right, then come say these things where only I can hear you, because, like, I don't want my men to hear your lies. and then he like
Yeah.
starts giving him basically his backstory. And then Capricorn's getting steadily more and more angry. And
Right.
then he like rubs this red stone. I made a note that it was a red stone because I was like, is that like is that a magical anger induced? No, I think it was just habit. It never comes up again. But that he like messes with his rings and stuff when he's angry. It's just like a calming technique. But yeah, his
Right.
mom was also like, he's full of shit. Just kill him. And but because he knows all this stuff about Capricorn, Capricorn gets a little scared, and I think he's like, "Oh, but will I die if I killed him? Questionable." And so then he like leaves him alive because
I think also it
doesn't want
was
to take that chance.
Capricorn's arrogance also that probably
Oh, yeah.
made him think to himself, "Oh, there's nothing he can do to me to kill me. Like I'm sure it's fine. I could just kill him and I wouldn't die. We wouldn't die." I think there
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like an arrogance aspect there too.
Definitely a mix of arrogance and ignorance because he like repeats what everybody else says, and it's like authors are dead.
Yeah.
There are no
Well,
living
like-
authors.
If you compare it, like again, how like we talked about Mordula and how Capricorn like saw his mom, who in his mind, yeah, would be his creator, his mother, and how the relationship they have together. Then meeting this other person who's like, no, I'm your creator. I think maybe that,
Not my dad.
yeah, it was maybe this like push and pull of like, I don't know, thinking like, I don't know, maybe not even accepting that he's from a story or something. I mean, that would be a hard concept to grasp, though.
Mortala and Pinocchio could like stand kind of opposite each other and kind of call to Capricorn and see who he goes to.
Come here, Cappy, Cappy.
I do like that Master's so superstitious. He doesn't just stick to the superstitions of his homeland, of the book. Like anywhere he
Right.
goes, he's like, "Oh, this is a superstition here.
Yeah.
I should respect it. It should be fine." There's like, which the other thing I like is that Baster had an actual like house. He had made his own roots, largely so he could protect himself with all his little superstitious thing, and like he had John Wart root planted in front of his door, and it's like I don't expect we have a lot of crossover plants with Inkheart, or at least that things should be slightly different. Like their martens have horns, so that was really interesting to me.
Gwen, I
and
love
liked
Gwen.
that. Gwen is so
He bites.
Dustpin and Gwen is like that stereotypical cat owner that just lets their cat get away with everything. But the cat itself is not actually an asshole. They're just the asshole to their owner. And I liked Fahid too. We haven't like mentioned him.
I know. I was gonna say I really should have had a character banner because like the cast in this is just top tier.
I like that Fahid like comes at the story, and even though he's a kid, he comes from a very harsh like fictional world and everything. So when everyone's like, "Oh, well, this is probably like scary," and it's like, "Well, you shouldn't see, the execution," and he's like, "I mean, I've seen people. Let me tell you how experienced I am with executions. All right, I know that if the sword is sharp and the guy who uses it, like, it's gonna go real well, and if it's not, or the executioner is new, it's not gonna go well." And I'm just like. I love this child.
I have a few
He's
other
so good.
topics that I want to cover. I think this is one that I thought was very interesting. Again, I didn't know anything about going into this book, so I was really intrigued to find out this magic system and sort of the rules and costs of, the idea of reading a book to life and like another random being getting sucked in. I was like, whoa, that's like, like rule one in magic systems, like they have to cost something, and that is such like a cool consequence. I don't know. I was really impressed with this. I had no idea that this was what the book was about, so I don't know. I really liked that aspect to it, of sometimes him being like, when Mo was describing it, and he was like, "Oh yeah, and these people come out like maybe the mailman disappeared, or like a spider or something." Like there was moments where he didn't know what went in to replace people, which I thought was hilarious.
And apparently, like, depending on how well you read, determines like how well it's done.
Yeah, that's true. That was also an aspect. That's a good point. Yeah.
And like, there's the one part where Mo is talking about the one illustration of the women and how you can't see the face of the one woman, but he's always imagined it being his wife, and then his wife gets read into the book and then read back out. I thought that was so like beautiful of a detail, because then you really like start to question, well, like, what is this other world? Does it exist because the book exists? Would it exist independently of if Fenolio even wrote it? How many other people out there have read beings in and out of these books? Like, it's so fascinating.
Yeah, because
Super fascinating.
she said while she was in the world, Capricorn was gone.
Right.
Yeah. There was a lot of questions like that that I was wondering about, but since like again it was the setup of a first book in a series, I'm thinking that that stuff is going to get built on in the rest of the trilogy.
It reads as both a great, and this is one of the things that I noticed that Cornelia did a lot really well. It was great for like, it could be a build up to something else, or it could just be like a little like concept or a comment right there that if nothing ever comes of it, it doesn't feel unsatisfying.
That's
right?
true, yeah.
It's still like fine. And so it actually kind of like makes it to where she's putting down the breadcrumbs so masterfully so you can figure out anything you need to, but also like you don't know which crumbs belong to the actual cake and which ones are just like little crumbs here and there. So I just really enjoy writers who do that, and that's one of my favorite things.
Mm-hmm.
I think in regards to the magic, I also really liked that Maggie was able to decide like, hey, I want to do this too, and just do it. Like it seems like magic was like obtainable. She's like, if I try hard to really like bring these words to life, I can and I will. And I love that it wasn't like, oh, Mo just was the special one, the chosen one. He just had this innate gift. It was like, no. Once you understand it, you can obtain it too. And I was like, oh yeah, okay. I love that messaging. I don't know why. It's heartwarming.
And that they can work together with the magic, because at the end of the book she like starts it, but she can't actually bring herself to condemn Capricorn and anybody else to death. So her dad comes up and he does it, and then she finishes it after that. And I was like, that's such a cute like moment of parental protection. But on a technicality, she still is helping murder these people, but it's fine. In her mind, she's not. And that's what matters.
I also love that she wasn't able to read those lines, because before that she's actually the one telling the writer to kill them. But then when
Yeah.
it comes down to it, she can't bring herself to.
Because it's easy to say something in anger or when you can't conceptualize it, and then it's harder to actually do the thing. And that whole easier said than done concept, and I think Cornelia illustrated that like perfectly.
It's definitely, yeah, shows something about Maggie's character, but also like a very good contrast to like Fenolio earlier when he was like talking about like, oh, in the death scene I wrote of Dustfinger, and like how like happy he is about like some of the stuff he did in his book. But yeah, then Fenolio also has to see the consequences of his words, which is like a very weird.
He scoffs at happy endings like several times throughout the book, especially like at first when they're like, well, why didn't you write a happy ending for like Dustfinger? And he's like, happy endings aren't interesting, basically. And then even when he's like writing the test thing for the Tin Soldier, and he's like, yes, it's all the like happy ending sugary bullshit, all this, the Tin Soldier and the paper ballerina, they get a house and they live happily ever after.
Yeah.
He's like still not on board with it, but he like sees the value in them now, I think.
Yeah.
And I like that that it is, I assume either they'll never explain it or it'll be explained in later books, but that there is a definite connection between reading the story out loud that's like on paper and just telling a story. So that's like really interesting to me, because oral storytelling has been around for like ever, but the oral storytelling didn't work versus
Right.
like reading it off of a story that's written down.
Right.
So I'm like, I want to know why and the difference there.
I was
Or
also wondered about that because, like, in my mind, when they're like, "Oh, it's just going to be a quick fix of him rewriting a different ending," and I was like, "Doesn't it have to be something about it being bound in the book? Like, that's not part of it. It just has to be down in ink." Like, what? Like, that was a big question I did have about the magic,
and
and
it
if
doesn't even
the
have to be the
story,
original author.
yeah, if the story hadn't otherwise been like so good, I probably would have been really nitpicky about this because it did feel a little bit out of left field, a
Right.
little bit too convenient. But like because the rest of the story is so strong, it's kind of like okay, I'm along for the ride. I'll accept it. At least that was my feeling.
Right.
I was just like, I'm hoping it leads to something bigger, or like to them figuring out why the limitation is what it is. And then it like very satisfactory came to like Maggie being like, well, I can write the stories and then I can like maybe I can read them. But if that works, it just leads me to ask even stronger, why does oral storytelling not also work? Why does it have to be written down?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because yeah, that's a good point. Because like again, maybe I don't know. I'm like kind of like looking over at Martin and
We're only
Danny,
in
like
book one. We
if
just
that combination of if an author was also like a reader or had that reading ability that Mo and Maggie had, like so if Maggie becomes an author, how would that affect reading her own work?
as a side note, like, can you imagine you're working on revisions and you're reading it out loud just to like double check things, and then you got shit popping up in your house, and you're like, "Fuck, not again!"
That sounds so fun, though.
Yeah.
But that's like an interesting part also of the magic system is like they never know exactly what's going to get read out of the book. Like even when they're reading a specific scene, like he didn't mean to get for read out of the book. Like he was just going for the treasure. Like that was the goal. Or like how the room filled up with sand. Also, it was like, oh, that was no, that wasn't like But again, it's like you can't really pick and choose.
Is it more dependent on how the reader is reading it, or how the writer wrote it? What like the focus of the
Or how
scene
the
was?
audience is interpreting it,
yeah.
what's hitting with them. I don't know, but it's cool. I like that the magic was quite soft in that way. It had this hard limit with the cost, but a very soft, wishy-washy. Who is going to get pulled up? What's going to come out?
Mm-hmm.
I do mildly like wonder if the mailman heard him reading, because everybody else who got pulled in heard it. So I'm just like, this mailman just delivering mail, hearing this guy read this book out loud, and then disappears into another world.
Didn't you read Cornelia Funke's short story, The Mailman with Super Hearing? No.
I also wonder about like when he was reading out all this gold for Capricorn and all the sand and everything came with it. What went in for that? Was it items that were in the room? Was it like a piece of dust for a piece of sand? Like, it's not a detail that's important, but it has me wondering.
And
Yeah.
also, all the treasure was inanimate too, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not
Yeah.
like something living was passing through and being exchanged for something else living.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah, but he says that like one of the first times he ever did it, he lost a stuffed teddy bear. So it's like they do establish that like inanimate objects require an inanimate cost. Living requires a living cost.
Right,
So,
yeah, that's right.
Like equivalent exchange.
Yeah.
I also don't think it has to be like necessarily person for person. I think they established that some cats went in at some point.
Yeah, just a being for a being.
Why didn't Capricorn have like the reader like way far off in a compound super far away, like just with cats, so that there would be no risk of like losing like
So
anybody?
full of
He doesn't
himself.
care.
He's like, meh, I'll never go back into a book. I don't care. Like, at first, he's like, oh shit, you sent my man in there. And dude's like, well, yeah, that's what happens. It's like, and.
But
the
why didn't
Capricorn
Mo
just kinda
try
sits
that?
there.
Why didn't Mo be like, yo, Eleanor, could you watch my little baby girl Maggie for a little bit? I'm gonna go way far away and try to read this. Like,
So I'll go ahead and throw this out also. What if the book being read isn't like, let's say, a fantasy book or one with particular world building, but rather, like a book set in, Ontario or something like that?
contemporary
Minnesota,
fiction.
What if it was like
You
a
know, so-
biography of like a dead person that
know?
did exist in the real world? Could you
Abraham
like,
make
Lincoln,
that of it?
vampire hunter in the flesh, baby.
We could
you know,
get
what if it's
new
fiction and
computers.
everything, but it's set like in the
Just-
real world and whatnot?
Just read a contemporary novel about like a billionaire talking like about their like money, like a Scrooge McDuck situation. Just read all that money and do it.
Would it work like with a nonfiction, like a?
Well, no,
Yeah,
I'm talking about
just
like
book,
because
though.
there's a subgenre of romance where it's just like billionaire babies, and it's
Oh, that's true,
it's
yeah.
just romance with billionaires. And so I'm like, hold on, can I read his credit card? Can I read his bank account and like, whoops, and just
Oopsie.
like, or at the very least, I'll just read about him using his computer, and then I can have his computer, and I get a nice upgrade.
Right.
But I think that's something really kind of intriguing about the magic system. Like for children readers, that's something that stays with you after the book. This idea of wish fulfillment and like being like, oh, Maggie got this power. I can imagine well, I don't know, like Danny and Marta, like who read it when you were younger, like trying really hard to read books out loud and like thinking of like what you would want and how to do it. And like I can just imagine that the kids definitely did that. I know they did. If I, dreamt about like the freak show of Cirque du Freak and like vampires, like kids definitely were reading books out loud.
Well, I actually read the book when I was 40, so
And Michael, did you then go back to War and Peace and like try to get some stuff out of there? No?
Does 40, does that count as a kid? I don't know.
That does lead to like, because like Mo discovered his ability on accident, right? His daughter discovered it, I would argue, intentionally.
Mm-hmm.
What about that guy Darius? How did he? I forgot again.
He
Accident.
was reading something
Much like
out
Mo.
loud, and Basta just kind of like noticed the magic about him. But I don't think it says how he, like how
It does.
Darius figured it out for
Oh,
himself.
then they like took him in and like tried to
Well,
Yeah.
Darius said
massage that
he,
talent.
yeah, Darius said that he was like reading something for, I think, his sister's class or whatever. He did a lot of like public reading and stuff, and that blue jays would appear when he read this one book. So I don't think it actually says for 100% certain if he was aware it was happening, because like he doesn't say that he doesn't say that Baster told him about the blue jays, just that incident Baster noticed the blue jays. So he might have been kind of aware before then, but not like fully. Just like maybe knew that like they had a higher bird population whenever he read books. But yeah,
Would also be like, also haven't seen my nephews in years.
Oh no.
man, my dog hasn't come home in a while. What's up with that?
Oh my gosh. I would like to talk about a subject that I found very impressive with this book that really kind of blew me away, which is the writing style and the prose. I thought this book was so beautifully written. Especially like when I compare it to other books we've read for the book club, it was beautiful and lyrical without being convoluted, and it still felt accessible. And I had mentioned like to people who I was talking to while I was reading this, like I wish I had the physical copy because there's so many lines I wish I just wanted to highlight the crap out of. I was like, oh dang, that's a good line. That's a good line. And I actually afterwards went and looked up like Inkheart quotes, and it was so funny that quotes that were listed were not the ones I was thinking of, and it just goes to show that there are so many things in here that are kind of, I don't know, touching or can resonate with people.
I actually wrote a couple quotes down on the Mila note that I was taking.
Oh.
And one of them was like, books have to be heavy because there's a whole world inside them. And I loved that quote. I'm scrolling through, it's all like mixed in with my reading thoughts. Oh, this is the hour of pride and power of claw and horn when referring to like nocturnal things. I thought that was really cool.
And you have to remember this was translated, so
Yes.
like it's not just Cornelia's words. It's like a collaboration almost with.
I
I just
kept
looked it up in my book.
thinking that the whole
translator
time.
was Anthea Bell, and so like I feel like there's just the extra level added to it when you have a translated work where it's like there was extra effort put into this to make sure it like stood as what the author envisioned it to be.
Well,
That
I know,
they captured
Marta,
it, yeah.
you read the German, the original version. I went back and listened to the first chapter of the German audiobook, and I thought, okay, I just wanted to see if it was just as beautiful in German. I was like, okay, yes, it was translated well, but what are your thoughts reading it in the original language, Marta?
Well, I haven't read the English version, but I absolutely agree that the writing style was beautiful in the German one. So
Yeah, but still accessible, right? Like that's the thing that I find like crazy about it. Like she has a way of
Yeah.
making things beautiful, but like not convoluted.
She
Right.
like in it like the way she writes and describes things is reminiscent of like older fantasy styles, but not as dry, or she didn't go on. She knew when to stop. Like she would describe a setting, but she knew when the setting was enough, and it's like, okay, you get the feeling of it. This like I specifically made a note about Dustfinger's fire display that he used to distract Maggie out of the house, and the way that she like described his performance and everything was just so great and so like beautiful. But it didn't like go on. It like ended when it ended, and then other things went to it. And I imagine that if I had been reading some like other or older fantasy books and stuff, that would have gone on for several more pages.
Right.
Yeah,
So
that's true. It was just enough. I agree. Like even just the opening when it was like talks about like, oh yeah, and the dark stranger outside, and it was like I don't know, it was just
so good.
Yeah, that first chapter was really good.
she could do a lot with a little. It felt like I don't know to me like
Yeah. First even couple chapters.
even the dialogue was quite quite well. I thought really executed. The characters had their own ways of speaking. Like Bast never sounded the same as Eleanor or Mo or Dustfinger. Like they all sounded a little bit
They all had
having their own personality.
they all had their own unique voice and vernacular, and it was definitely good.
Yeah.
I like that Baster was very proud of the fact he could write his name now.
that was very cute.
I can also write
I
my
love
name.
that.
Just saying.
I'm like, but does he have better handwriting than me? Because he might have better handwriting than me, and that I don't know if that will make me sad or not.
Because didn't they learn just like the letters of Inkheart so they could know the book? Like
Yeah, they were saying the first couple of letters, and he pulled all the books that started with IN.
IN. They weren't
Imagine
to learn to read, because I remember that when it said that Baster had written IN, that it struck me. I was like, wait, but Capricorn specifically said that his men weren't allowed to read, but he learned to read, and it was very specifically a power move, and he even says it was a power move because he's like, I want them to stay ignorant, but I wanted to learn to read and write because like literacy is power. And so then like Baster's like, yeah, basically he's been learning to read in secret to impress Capricorn, and I'm like, oh Baster baby, no. that's not gonna make him happy.
so cute. I don't know if any. Wait, what's the other word? If anybody else had quotes that resonated with them, or any other thoughts about the writing style.
I don't know if this is particularly writing style, but one thing I noticed is that there's 2 chapters titled "Going Home," and of course I didn't bookmark it. But there's one chapter. It's when Eleanor goes back to find her books all burned, and then also the last little bit is.
Oh, you'd be right.
The last chapter is also called "Going Home," and I was like, I went back and I like looked at both of them to see if there was like parallels and stuff, and I thought that was just really interesting because there's a couple of chapters where the titles are similar because like there's a chapter called Fire, and then there's also a chapter called Fire and Stars. This is the only time where a chapter title repeats, and I just wanted to know if there was like intention behind that, but I couldn't find anything about it.
Going
I
home
would
2.0.
think, yeah, I actually think that home and homesickness is also like a big, hold on, theme of the story in general. So I can understand that, especially like Maggie talked about like her little box of belongings, her book box being like her home, and like her house not feeling like her home even as much as Moe's traveling van, and yeah, then you had on the contrast Dustfinger, who is super homesick to get back into the world of Inkheart, and like home is definitely this ongoing theme in the book, which I
It very much hammers that home is where the heart is and not a place. Excuse me.
Yeah. Yeah, even with another one that comes to mind is Maggie with Moe's sweater. You know, like,
I forgot about that.
yeah, when she's, for a good part of the book, when she's apart from him, she's got his sweater to kind of comfort her.
There's a part where she lays on the pillows he had been using, and she's like, they didn't smell like him yet. They still smelled like detergent. And I
Yeah.
remembered that as a kid, I would steal my dad's pillows because they smelled like him. And I was like, oh, Maggie, I feel for you. I get it.
Right.
I also think you could. I think you could also say that Gwyn, that Dustfinger was his home, and at a certain point, Farid became his home too. Like he got like somebody else who was like
Yeah.
in his circle, like his found family. Like they definitely had a bond.
Their
And
home
I love that. And I also love that Farid kind of like followed Dustfinger around. Like, you're my people. I hate to tell you, but like you're not getting rid of me. You're my people. Like
You're my people. That's my pet. I'm yours now. We're
It's
stuck.
like I'm your
together.
problem. You have to deal with it.
yeah, I don't know. I
Probably
loved
right.
the dynamic of that. Like it was so heartwarming.
I love that he didn't have the heart to like just straight up leave the boy, because I feel like if Dustfinger really wanted to, he could have left the boy in the dust, but he
He's
just
so
let
selfish,
him
but at the
keep
same time,
following
he
him.
cares so much about the other people.
But isn't that what they said, that how he died in the actual Inkheart was
saving
because of
Gwen.
Gwyn? So it's like we know that he has a soft
Yeah.
spot for his found family, and Farid is now part of that.
I really feel like Dustfinger, he's just a survivalist. He just does what he needs to survive, but he like still cares and he still feels bad about it. But at the end of the day,
Yeah.
he's gonna do what he needs to live and to make it. Apparently, with the exception of Gwyn, he's very much not going to like abandon Gwen. He'd rather give his life there. But yeah, he does care a lot. I like fire as like one of the heavy motifs and symbols,
Okay.
especially since we're introduced to fire as not bad or good. Because Dustfinger's our introduction to fire in the book, and he talks about it very much like you need to respect it. He's like, you can talk to it. Fire's not bad. Fire's not scary. You just can't let it take control, and you can't let it get out of hand, because it's not your friend either.
You just need to
Fire was-
respect it.
Yeah, it was
Yeah.
such a great motif in the book. Like even when you think about Maggie wanting to read by candlelight, like it came in so many parts. Like fire, just it was the motif over the book that we saw. Like I don't know. I love that when there's like threads that go throughout, but it wasn't like. It's not like that super obvious thing, like where, oh, books are the big thing, or like this is the big image. Like it was just this image that several characters had a thing with fire.
And we only
Right.
actually see fire being directly destructive once, and there's a very heavy emphasis on the before and the after. The only time that it like focuses on the fire itself is when Dustfinger's shoving his hands in the fire to get the books, and even then it's like very briefly. It very much focuses just on what happens after the fire destroys things.
Yeah, and I definitely think that Farid trying to learn to like manipulate fire in the way that Dustfinger did, like really mirrored Maggie trying to learn the book reading from Mo. Like it was like this really cool mirror of like picking up somebody else's
Yeah.
ability.
I could see that.
Of a passing down of the skills.
Yeah. But like they both, like both Farid and Maggie, they were both kind of like, this is sort of a skill that I envy and I want, and they both were kind of like, kind of just went for it without really,
You
without
cannot
like,
keep it
yeah, they. Neither of them were really like invited into this. They both were like, "Nope, this I like that. I'm doing it too." I
Maggie
love
was
that energy.
Actually, they were both specifically kind of rejected from it. Like Maggie's dad was just like, "No, you can't." He's like, "You can't handle the trauma that I've handled." And it's like, "Well, Dad, maybe if your first experience with it wasn't just your wife being tossed into a book and you can't find her anymore, you might see this a little differently." But so she like had to completely go on her own, and to contrast that, Dustfinger just wanted Fareed to be safe about it. He's like, I'll teach you how to use fire, but stop doing these dangerous things that could get you killed. So I liked that contrast there.
Yeah.
I also like how they both ended up using those skills at the end. So like, Farid was the one setting fire
Yeah.
in order to create a distraction, and Maggie had to use the reading.
Mhm.
So they both get to actually use those skills in a way that's significant.
Do you think we could say that it's a passing of the torch?
That's what I was trying to remember. Yes, I love that.
Actually, I personally get the sense that Maggie is better at doing the reading than Mo
Mo?
is. You know?
She might be. She's not afraid of it.
She has
Yeah.
less fear.
It follows how the magic system is set up, that like it depends on like how well you read, because like Darius is like, well, I can't really read well because I'm always terrified that they're gonna beat the shit out of me. And then like Mo is, I get the feeling that he's hesitant even when he's doing, like he has learned to fake a confidence so that he can do it well, so that he can keep his voice steady and everything, so he doesn't mess up when he's reading. But Maggie seems to have more of a little bit of a passion for it, and a confidence that is building better.
There's definitely an
So-
intention behind her words.
Do
Yeah,
you
so
think that it kind of comes to the theme of like talent versus hard work?
I think maybe, I don't know, but I think maybe just to kind of build on what Sam's saying, like Mo could have like an aspect of being jaded about it,
Oh, for sure.
like just
Yeah.
over the years of doing it. And with Maggie, it's like she's old enough to know how to really put like her emotions and things into her readings, but young enough still to not be jaded about
Well, Mo
things
also,
or it or life or whatever in general, and so she can just go for it and
Mo
be
also
successful
had
as a result.
Mo also had an extremely traumatic
Yeah.
first time with his. So
Yeah,
there's
that's
there's
right.
that. Whereas Maggie's first time was she summoned Tinkerbell.
I mean, that wasn't technically Mo's first time though. It was just his first time getting something
Oh.
alive out.
Yeah, you're right.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Oh.
that's true.
I specifically
that's
mean the
right.
first time with living beings.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Maggie's first
that's
time
right.
with a living being was Tinkerbell.
I feel
Right.
like before he knew that he could get something living out of it though, it was like something fun that they did, and they
Yeah.
gave the
Yeah.
things to Maggie and all that, so it was something that he enjoyed and saw as something positive to begin with.
Yeah,
Sure.
you're
And
right.
then
But-
when he had his first time with something living, that's when he started not liking it so much.
Yeah, and after, when he was trying to read his wife out and he couldn't, he like kept a silver cloak that he lined her book box with. So there's still an element of him giving her stuff from the books.
I have on the topic of Teresa, the mother. This is so silly, but it's like when I was doing research of the book afterwards and saw the character list, I didn't realize like her name like in the book was like really spelled Teresa and then Raisa like that, like because in the audiobook I just
Right.
assumed that Raisa was spelled differently, but it's like, oh, in the print it's really just the last four letters of her name. Like I just think it maybe would have been a little bit more obvious like seeing it like that, because like as an audio listener I didn't pick up on it until for it is like, oh, she kind of looks like that girl, and then I was like, oh shit, that's the mom. But like maybe the
Yeah,
text reader
that-
would have seen that by the name alone.
So
That
it was
twist did get me.
It was
I have to
weirdly
say.
it was weirdly foreshadowed from like the first of Dustfinger's POVs. Because the first of Dustfinger's POVs, he starts like I didn't. One of the reasons it took me a bit to realize Dustfinger was a storybook character is because of the way he was interacting with Maggie. He was very much interacting in a way that it's like he knew her mom and he loved her mom and he could see her mom in her. So I thought like Dustfinger and Silvertongue were part of some order that like goes back decades or whatever. And then I'm like, oh, he's a book character. And then I'm like, then why was he acting that way? And
Yeah.
then he like meets Risa and there's something about her blue eyes and I'm like, wait a second. Hold up. And I didn't know Maggie's mom's name, so like I couldn't remember it. But so the more he like interacted with like Risa and with Maggie and just certain things from his perspective, I'm like, oh no, so he is in love with her mom, just not in the way I thought. Okay. So
Oh, yeah.
I felt that was some really good like subtle characterization. But again, it's really just because I'm used to kind of reading romances with kind of that creep factor where it's like a guy's looking at a woman's daughter, but he wasn't creepy about it, which I enjoyed. He was just like kind of sees resemblances and stuff, and that tugged at his heart and made him feel guilty. Because I'm like, okay, this is fine. This isn't creepy. We're good. Welcome to the train. Going back a little bit to what you said about talent versus hard work, I do think that that's a little bit in there. That it's like you can have a natural talent for something, but you don't get better if you don't work on it and help it grow. Because
Yeah, sure.
there's
Like
there's
maybe
definitely an
even
aspect of
Finocchio?
that with several things. Sorry, go ahead.
Maybe even with the writer Finocchio. Like, he's
Like, yeah.
talented, but he's also experienced, and he's written lots of books, and he's kind
That's
of both.
a good point, Michael. I like that they brought up that he brought so many books. Like right when they came to him, he almost like didn't even remember which book they were talking about. He's like, "Which of my books?" Like,
Yeah.
I don't know. I loved that. Like,
Which of my
and,
books
like,
is out of print?
yeah,
now?
as a writer, I was kind of like, how do you not know like all the characters of all your books? But like, I don't know. I thought it was cute. It was cute.
It's like,
Yeah,
well,
that
we'll
was
see if
a
you
good
think
part.
that in 50 years, Violet.
Yeah, but once he started like getting
mean-
back into the world, he
Yeah.
started like you could see that he was like, oh,
He
freak,
remembered
Dustfinger,
it.
there's Dustfinger. Like, oh my god, like he was like fangirling over his own characters.
I will also say that moment though, I could see like why you would be reluctant because like you're just chilling there with your grandkids, having a good old time, baking a cake, and then some random ass fan shows up to your door with his kid, and they're like, "We would like to talk to you about your book." And it's like, how did you find out where I live? This is my personal these are my grandchildren. I don't know who you are. They could have been Baster for all he knew, just out there to off him.
But
So-
like, it also almost made me think like, oh, like they talked about like Inkheart maybe not being like there that being that many copies of it. I was like, oh, was it maybe one of his lesser known books? Did he have like other more known books out there, and this was just
I think it's supposed to be implied that it's really hard to get a hold of because it's been ages. She's 9 years. He's been in this world for 9 years, and one of his first goals was that for Capricorn, one of Capricorn's first goals was to find all of the copies of Inkheart. So I think it's just that he's been taking all of them for almost a decade.
Mm-hmm.
wait a minute.
Looking at the Wikipedia.
Yeah, I mean, actually, in the real world, how many copies of Inkheart have been sold? Like, of the Inkheart of the
Oh,
meta
stop
book.
it.
I would definitely buy the Inkheart about Capricorn.
Yeah, I would
I
love
would
to
read that.
like. What? I don't remember what it was. Oh, Fangirl by Rainbow Rowell.
Mhm.
It's a story about a story, and then
Yeah.
the author later wrote that actual story. I want that for Inkheart. That's what
Yeah,
I
they
want.
did
I
that
love
too
when
with
that
you read the book too, Danny. Hazelwood, the Hazelwood.
Yes.
It's not a book, but in one of the Final Fantasies, there's an opera that is always referenced, and then with a special edition release, they release the script to the opera from the game, and So
I
I love
that.
when they meta stuff like that.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
you can just go deep into a world. It's so satisfying.
Semi because of that, I reference a lot of my stories in my own story. Like if my characters are reading, 9 chances out of 10 they're reading something I wrote because of
Well,
that.
Cornelia references her own things a lot in different books
I
because
love that though.
there's this trilogy which is also getting like a sequel trilogy with Farid as the main character. The first book was supposed to come out this year, I think, but it's been pushed off a little bit because she has so many other projects going on. It's
That's
called The
okay.
Color of Revenge,
She
so that's
can
going to
wait
come
till
out
I catch up.
eventually. And that book, I've seen, it connects the Inkheart world to Reckless, which is her other like big popular series, which is it was originally called the Mirror World series, and then they like had this whole rebranding of the names and the covers of the books, so it's now just called the Reckless series. And that book series connects to The Thief Lord, which is one of the first books she ever wrote back in like 2001. And like
She's
all of her
busy.
stuff is interconnected, and like I just started my reread of the Reckless series, and in the second book you get like a line that references the Thief Lord, and like I just think it's so like fascinating how everything is all tied together.
Excuse me while
Yeah,
I put a hold on all
she's
of her
been
books.
busy and she's done a lot of stuff. It's actually I was well, like I live in Luxembourg, like right, which is so close to the German border. So I go to Germany a couple times a month, and I was like over in the bookstore looking for Inkheart because I wanted to buy the physical copy, and I couldn't find it, but I found like a bunch of other books of hers that I'd never heard of. Like even like in the new section, like I was like, oh, okay, so she still has like stuff coming out, and like so
The
she's
fourth
really
Reckless book just came out this year, and
yeah,
I had no idea until I saw it on the shelf at the bookstore.
she's really
Oh.
beloved.
So you remember how pre-stream I told you that like I had that hold on the Inkheart book at my library? I went to see what other audiobooks my library app has, and I looked up her name, and Inkheart pops up, and it's like 5 more weeks, and I'm like, oh, don't need that anymore.
That's how sometimes it jumps because then people like like oh, just kidding, I don't need it anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, my library has the whole Inkheart series on audiobook as well as the Reckless series, so I'm definitely going to continue with Inkheart. I have to say, out of all the nostalgia train picks that I've been a new reader to, this has been like my biggest surprise of a book. Like, I think because I was also a new reader last month to Throne of Glass, and also went in that without reading the blurb, and was so disappointed. It felt like such a chore to get through. I really went into this month thinking, oh, this is going to be another chore, but at least it's an audiobook. So that's why I read it at the beginning of the month to get it over with. And I was just so surprised to like fall in love with the story. Like it was, it's that moment like as a reader that you get like that reading high like from a book, and I
Yeah.
got that with Inkheart. So
I was gonna read half of it yesterday, sleep, and then read the other half of it. And no, I went to bed at 5:30 this morning, having finished the book. So
Well, I highly recommend all of her works. She's
got holds
my
on 'em
favorite
now.
author, and all of her stuff is so good. I know, Violet, you said that when you went into this, you thought they would be like hopping in and out of the books.
yeah,
If you like that kind of thing, definitely check out Reckless. It's
Yeah.
not like hopping in and out of the books, but it's definitely more of a portal fantasy.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of fairy tale elements, and it's a slightly older audience, I think. This reads very like middle grade, and I think Reckless is more like upper YA.
yeah, that's also another thing. This book was published in 2003, so it is like if you look it up, it says YA, but that's just because the YA as a category and middle grade as categories weren't what they are today. So in 2003, the same thing as like Aragon or some of those other books that now read a little bit immature in comparison.
I still feel like when I looked at the cover and everything, and when I started, like I was about a fourth of the way through the book, and my husband like asked me what the book was, and I'm like, oh, I think it's YA. And he looked up, he's like, oh yeah, it's YA. It's, to me, I had a very nostalgic feeling because it's what YA should be.
Yeah,
This
it's
is
like that
this is
lower
what
YA
YA
feeling.
used to be, and it's what it should be again.
Oh.
And I honestly hope it's what YA returns to, because like right now YA is really oversaturated with a lot of adult books that were aged down, and so I don't think people remember what the YA target demographic is like.
Yeah.
Like what that feels like.
It's true. A book like Inkheart couldn't be published YA today. It would be published upper middle grade. Like, yeah, YA is pushed so far to the line of new adult. Like, things need to be a little bit sexier, a little bit violent. Otherwise, like
some newer YAs that I think are really good. Well, Iron Widow is a bit violent, but I don't think it's like the way the violence is done is very YA to me. So I think that still fits.
But
very
didn't
YA.
That get aged down? Wasn't that supposed to be an adult book that got aged down?
No.
I thought it was.
Okay. Always supposed to. No, Iron Widow was always supposed to be YA. They did tell her to tone some of the violence and things down because it is YA, but no, Jiran always like wanted that to be YA. And her middle grade Zachary Yin that also came out is very like middle grade. And then Blood Like Magic is another really good YA that I think is like, because YA covers from 12 to 19. So some books will be more mature than others just because that's almost 10 years of ages. And the teen years, you mature. The only comparable age grouping for how fastly development happens is infant to toddler. And that's 1 to 4, 5. So other than when you're first born and developing, you develop the most between 12 to 19. Like rapidly. 14 is not the same age group as 16, even though they're grouped together.
Yeah, it's I think definitely book marketing, there's definitely some gray areas, and in a way the constraints are.
Yeah, because like I would not let my he'll be 11 in October. I do not let my 11-year-old read Iron Widow. I would let him read Inkheart though. But when he's 15, same age group, I'd let him read Iron Widow at 15.
Yeah, I think that's definitely.
It also depends on the kid. That's why parents should really be very involved in what YAs their kids read, because it is so different. And that's another thing for a different time, but each kid.
Well, sometimes the train goes a little bit off the rails. That happens. It's
sorry,
like just a little bit of a derailment.
I'm very passionate about the YA category specifically because when I was a teenager, it was my favorite. And even into my 20s and as an adult, I love a lot of what I call actual YAs. And I really hated most of the adult aged down ones because there's such a strong dissonance. You've got these teenagers acting like adults or in these adult situations. And it's like, it takes me out. I can't enjoy the book.
Well, I really think what Inkheart did so well is like I fully loved and enjoyed it as like in my 30s. Like, and I feel like kids would also love and enjoy it. And I think there's definitely books like that I've read for the book club, like as a first time reader, like Warrior Cats that maybe didn't hit as much with 30-year-old Violet as it would have with 12-year-old Violet, but it's like. This book had such an evergreen, ageless, timeless feeling to it that...
It's like a good family movie where you've got younger characters and older characters and things for younger readers and things for older readers. Like, a kid might not be as in love with Eleanor as we are.
That's true. Right. I can see that she would probably be annoying to kids.
Mm-hmm. I definitely am in a group where if I didn't know little old ladies like her, I probably wouldn't be as endeared to her as I was. But like she talked so much like my grandmother, I couldn't help but love her.
I used to find her really annoying when I read the books the first time round, and this time round I just absolutely loved her. So
that's what I was going to ask for like Marta and Danny. Like, how did your feelings change? And like, characters like that had a little bit nuance, like Eleanor or Dustfinger, like. And even just, other things about the story. How did it change reading it as a child to an adult?
I feel like I've read it so many times at this point that my thoughts on it don't really change a whole lot from time to time. But this time I will say I was a whole lot more interested in Basta as a character than I ever have been before. Like, he's always been a cool character and, like, pretty interesting, but he was never one that I felt particularly, like, enamored by. Like, I wasn't super, like, into the stuff that he was doing. But this time around, when I was reading it, I was just like, okay, but when is Basta gonna show back up and do cool things? Because I kind of miss him and he's not in the scene. Like, I don't know what it was about this time around, but he was definitely like a spotlight character for me when I read it this time.
Oh,
I feel like he's so underappreciated for his skills and competence because like when they were on
Yeah.
the run and he was tracking them, like he knew. Like he's staring right where they were, and this is such high tense anxiety moment, but he was with Cockerel, and Cockerel just did not want to do anything, and so he like convinces Baster, well, let's go this way, and Baster's like, yeah, the like fat old lady probably would have preferred to go downhill anyway. But it felt to me like a moment where he was ignoring his gut, and if he had followed his gut, they would have been screwed so many times.
Yeah,
and
he's
like
clever.
Dustfinger's like, yeah, I've been feeding the dogs cheese, and he has no idea. And then later, he's like, I told them, I said he was feeding them cheese, but nobody listens to me.
I forgot about that part. Jeez.
Oh, so Master knows. And then, like, he's punished every time they get away. Like, he's held responsible. They 100% like trick him. Dustfinger's just better than Baster in certain things. But instead of acknowledging that, they're like, no, Baster, this is your fault for not being better.
Yeah, but the thing is, like, Basta also knows his flaw. Like, he knows his flaw is his superstition.
Right.
Like, he's not ignorant
yeah.
to the fact that that's his weak side. Whereas, like, a lot of characters, like, are oblivious to their flaws.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I don't know, I kind of love that about him. Even, like, the fact that he was so loyal to Capricorn and then ended up sort of on Capricorn's bad side. And he was even kind of like, yeah, it was just a very interesting dynamic. I could definitely see how that would grow with you on the reread, Danny. Marta, did you have any feelings rereading?
Yeah, I definitely found the bad guys more interesting this time. As well as Stanley said, like, when you're reading it as a child, it's just like you want the good guys to win, but like I found them more endearing this time. And I also was a lot more interested in the Uther character this time, and then Maggie wanting to learn to write. I know Daniel said that the first time round you already wanted to be a writer, but that wasn't the case for me, so I was definitely more interested in like, oh, I also want to jump into a story and that sort of thing. But this time, from a writer's perspective, it was a bit different.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. How did you guys feel about the ending of the book, actually? Because there's like all these like refugee like fairy tale characters.
I thought the choice that Eleanor took to... She went from being a woman who was very proud of having absolutely nothing to take care of except these books, and now she is like this matriarch of a little fantasy society in her like home, and she's so overprotective of them, and it's like so cute, but she's still like very determinedly not anybody's mom. So she's just, I feel she's such an interesting and like great character that way. And also, like, she took in her niece and her niece's family that she had just gone on this like journey for, under the guise that her niece's husband can just fix all of the books because she's got to rebuild that collection, damn it.
And I love how Darius joins her, and he's just like her assistant now. They're friends. They're chilling.
He's her new assistant. I love how they specifically point out that it's like, yeah, Darius is really good and focused at his job until he starts watching Mo like fix books, and then he's like, that's his day, watching Mo fix the books. And I'm like, it's just these cute little, the way that she wrote the ending are these cute little insights so that you can definitely see how this found family is going to like grow and be okay together.
Yeah.
I also like, almost like how you said, like Sam, that it started with her like protecting her niece. I loved where like found family and real family connect. Like for
Yes.
me, that's m- like the two coming together is a powerhouse for me. So it's like, oh yes, I love that Eleanor technically was really, part of their family, but like
Mm-hmm.
also they have all these new members coming in. It's so heartwarming. And
I also like the contrast between like Risa and Eleanor, because Risa seems very kind of naturally maternal to the fact like she recognizes her. It's been 9 years, but she recognizes her daughter when she sees her, and like she missed her. She celebrated her birthday. She knew when her birthday was in a fantasy realm. We're not gonna nitpick that. It's just cute, and but then you have Eleanor who's like, "Sir, you left your daughter with me, went off these. I didn't know what was going on. I don't know how to take care of kids. I know how to take care of books. Is she a book? She is not a book." And then she was like gonna sneak out and go on her own. I thought I made a good judgment call not letting her go off with the random man I don't know. I thought I did pretty good. So like Eleanor tries so hard, and it's like I know women like Eleanor that just don't have that natural maternal instinct and everything. I say natural because like you still have to learn it to a level, but that where they just don't know what to do, and they don't necessarily want to know what to do, but they still view children as like people, and so she still wants to like take care of her and everything, and she reminds her so much of her niece whom she loves and adores. So I'm like, I know some forever aunts. It's okay, Eleanor. You did good. I agree. I too agree. It was better to go with the girl who was going to go with the random man regardless
for
of what
sure.
you did.
I was just gonna say to Leonie that Danny and Marta have read the whole series, while the other three of us were new readers. I do plan to continue with the trilogy.
I gotta say, I have no memory of what happens in Inkspell. I remember a ton of details from Ink Death. Maybe I'm confusing the two, and like stuff that I think happens in Ink Death happened in Inkspell. I cannot
Mm-hmm.
tell you a single specific thing that I know for a fact happens in book two. So I went into this not thinking I was going to reread the rest of the trilogy, because honestly, this first one always has been my favorite of the three. And so I'm like, yeah, I'll just reread the first one. But now, like, sitting here talking about it, I'm like, oh god, I'm gonna have to reread the rest of the series, aren't I?
I have to say, I'm really proud of you and Marta for not like being like, oh, this thing, and like not saying it, because like I know like when I've been a rereader and like read things in the series, even like last month with Throne of Glass, I know that Emily and Callum had such a hard time holding their tongue on that line. They really wanted to talk about what happened in the whole series, and I was like,
I definitely also
funny.
want to reread the rest of the series though, although I stupidly left the other two books in Spain, so I have to wait until August.
In 7 to 8 weeks, I will read book 2.
Oh yeah, I should hold it for my library now.
I mean, I'm still in the middle of my reread of the Reckless series. I have to reread book 3. It'll be my first time reading the third book in that series. No, first time rereading it. And then the fourth one that just came out, I've never read before. That's why I'm rereading them. And
Oh,
so
okay.
I think I'm gonna read those two first and then go to Inkspell. I think that's my plan. I don't want to get too much Cornelia Funke on my plate at once.
Well, it sounds like we might have like, some buddy reads or something going on in
I
our
would
our
definitely
Discord
If the buddy
Inkheart
read
channel.
if the buddy read in the Inkheart channel starts before 7 to 8 weeks, I will probably just grab this. I have a Libro account, so I can get a free audiobook a month. I just if the kids are getting at the end of an audiobook, I'll save the credits so we can get the next book for them, because
Wait.
I play the audiobooks at bedtime.
I have a question actually. Is the series actually called Inkheart, or is it called like Ink World, or like what is
It's interchangeable.
Okay.
It's the same way Reckless and Mirror World are technically both the correct name for the series. It's Ink World or Inkheart.
because I like to on the Discord, because we usually continue on or have them as spaces to continue series, like to use like a series title, a series name. Like for our next month's pick, the Raven Boys, I put it under the Raven Cycle because I know that's the name of the series. So, or like what was the other one? His Dark Materials, and I didn't call it. Well, that was partially just because The Golden Compass and Northern Lights were two different titles, so it was just easier to say his Dark Materials.
Right.
You know, I know, Lexi, you have a lot of reading on your plate, but this one was really, really good. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah, we did hear that they were gonna, or Danny said, continuing in the Inkheart world.
Yeah, it doesn't follow the same naming convention, which is a little annoying, but...
How dare.
So I guess it'd be adding to the trilogy, right? Officially?
I think
It's kind of like how there's, like with Miss Peregrine's, how it's two separate trilogies that make up a whole series. It's kind of
That
like
makes
that
sense.
from what I've heard.
Yeah.
sounds like it's a companion series.
Yeah, pretty much.
I
There's
like
not
when
a ton of details out about it, but also I've been following it for several years, so
I love
I
companion.
know what I
books
can
and-
know.
I love companion books and companion series because they kind of have like freedom to do, like when you're writing a series that's supposed to go in a specific order, and just if it has to be like a series, it feels like there are certain things that you kind of have to do to keep it a cohesive series. But then if you're like, nah, this is trilogy A, and then here's my companion trilogy, you get a little more freedom to do things.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Go off in a different direction. Like I said, follow a different character, maybe even slightly different type of, I don't want to say genre, but subgenre?
You could change up even a few things as a writer that were bothering you.
For sure.
Up to
Yeah,
them.
for sure. I think that's kind of sometimes cool, like, yeah, if you're going to continue on in series, you can kind of, when you have a different character's point of view, go back and fix some of your mistakes. It's like, oh, that other character, they just didn't know.
Let me retcon right quick. Literally what Finalio did.
Yeah, just kidding. The shadow,
That Capricorn didn't win. Yeah.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just gonna take a moment to promo next month's pick, which is the Raven Boys. Another one that I haven't read. This is just like, it's been like a bunch that I haven't read in a row. So,
Oh.
but the rest of the train schedule for the year is, yes, August is the Raven Boys. September we are doing an event, which I will be posting a video about in the next coming weeks. Newbery Nostalgia, about Newbery award-winning novels, and the pick is going to be The Graveyard Book by Neil Gaiman for September in that month. October, we will be reading Shadow and Bone by Lee Bardugo. November, we are taking off for NaNoWriMo, and December, we'll be ending out the year with The Hobbit. So that is the train schedule for the rest of the year. So feel free to hop on and off at your leisure. I have the book club information down below if you don't follow us on Instagram or aren't in the Discord. It's a thing we do, yeah.
The Raven Boys is a 2-week hold, so I will be reading that faster.
I am really actually intrigued with the Raven Boys because I hear so many booktubers say like it's like an all-time favorite series or an all-time favorite book, and I'm like, what? How have I never read this? Why do so many people like it? But then there's people like Casey who's like, I ain't gonna be caught dead reading book 2 with this again.
I'm intrigued based on like little things that I've heard about different characters, but also it's not on script, so I probably won't be reading it.
I don't have the prompts yet for Newbery Nostalgia, but I really want one of the prompts to be like a serendipity pick. Like if you just come across one of the Newbery winners or nominees out in the wild, like it has chosen you. I just love that idea. So maybe the Raven Boys will find you, Danny.
One day.
I am now semi-concerned about the Raven Boys because I am famously #edgy, not like other people when it comes to my opinion.
Oh,
on
now that you
popular
know that
books.
people like it. I know, like I always
Alright,
do this
so-
when I find out I like a book, go and check all the bad reviews, and I'm like, okay.
So to be clear, nobody else's opinion will ever affect my opinion on anything. It never has, never will. Fandom just cannot affect me. I just very famously have opposing opinions on things. So, like, Now everybody hates Throne of Glass, but I heard about Throne of Glass and I heard like that what people were raving about they really liked. I was like, I'm a no. That's a not for Sam.
That's
But
how I
now
went into Throne of Glass. Yeah, I went
everybody's
thinking everybody
rereading.
hates it. I'm gonna love it, but
Now everybody's rereading it and they're like, oh, this is actually not good. And I'm like sitting in my hipster throne. Oh, you say that now.
yeah,
So,
I totally understand that feeling. I don't know. It's kind of fun to
and like I said,
everybody
I
having their own favorites and things
it'll
they ride for. Like when the book club did Warrior Cats, Katie Ann came in with a lot of love for that series, and I went in like into the live show hating it. And hearing Katie talk about Warrior Cats, I read the freaking second book in that series because how much she hyped it. Because she's like, this series, it's so good. And I mean, I have to say, the second book was better than the first book. So the first book just set up. So. Anyways, do we want to give our closing thoughts here on Inkheart, or if there's anything that we didn't cover? I mean, we hit all my banners.
I think I said all the things I was gonna say.
I feel like we could just go on and on also, though.
I can.
Yeah, Michael, you were also a new reader, and
Mm-hmm.
do you feel like as a new reader, as an adult coming into it, that it was like how does that affect it for you? Because I also came in as an adult new reader.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say I was swept away by it. I wouldn't say that I have like this burning urge to finish the rest of the trilogy or anything.
How dare you?
Was that Marta? Anyway. But you know, there were a couple things. You know, like I wasn't so sure about Funk's sense of direction. She kind of seemed to get her north, south, east, west kind of mixed up with the ocean and where the towns were and things like that. It didn't really make sense to me, you know, because I actually do like to, I wouldn't say it's super important, but when I read, I like to kind of like build a world and visualize like the scene, the area.
You couldn't visualize it so well. I feel like I had a really good because they said it was in Italy, right? Like
northern Italy.
I totally could see it in my head, like the little Italian villages and the
but
roads. And
I would say so, like in kind of like a sort of picturesque way, and for the senses and the colors and stuff like that. But like for example,
I think he mine's on a map, like.
Yeah, like okay, so for example, they set out early on and they go south, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then they reach Eleanor's place, which is south, and then they keep going south, and then they keep going south, and I believe that Funk says that at one point, you know, they get to the ocean. And she describes the sun as setting, like behind the ocean, right? So it's setting in the west, in other words. So I was like, okay, so, you know, they're driving along this seaside road and they can see the sunset to their right. And then Funk is like, okay, so now, you know, they're turning off. They're turning off into the country. So I'm thinking, okay, so they're turning, you know, east or to their left because they can't turn, you know, into the ocean to their right. And so I'm thinking, okay, so you know they're going east at this point, and then they get ultimately to Capricorn's village, and then when they escape, Fung says, okay, you know they're trying to get back to where they were before. So I'm thinking, okay, so they're trying to go, you know, west. I'm thinking, okay, so they're going to try and get west, but she explicitly says at that point, oh, so they're now heading south to get back to, you know, the seaside,
so,
like the resorts.
Interesting that like the cardinal directions were like what threw you off.
So
Yeah, and so I
turning,
was like,
hold on. So having lived on a peninsula, Florida,
yeah,
you can see the ocean from very far away. So
That's
just
kind
because
of what
they're
I was wondering
just
too
because they're
about the
turning
peninsula factor of it.
off doesn't mean does not explicitly mean they're turning away
I
from the ocean.
wonder
They could
if
have been
like
turning in the
Casey
same.
Okay.
And
says,
Italy's a boot, so
right.
Italy is also kind of shaped weird. So like,
because they
yeah,
could say
she
Eleanor
didn't.
was in northern Italy, like yeah, which would make sense if they're coming from Germany, which they don't say, but I mean we would just assume, right?
I
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we'll just assume they're
Okay.
coming from Germany. So yeah, so at that point, it is weird that they would go south to go back to Eleanor's because Eleanor should be in a northern direction. But as far as east and west goes, they were not necessarily heading east just because they're turning off and the ocean is to the west. Because like I said, when you live
Hmm.
on a peninsula, you can actually, if there's enough, if Italy is similar to Florida in this, you can see the ocean from like miles away. We could see the ocean and it would still be a 20-minute drive to the ocean.
My question though is if Cornelia Funke had like in her head like a specific town as inspiration, because I would almost bet money that she did. I almost would bet money that she had like places that she had vacation to or like
Well, she lived in Italy.
yeah, I'm wondering if she has a real world
It could
inspiration
also
city. And I want to know if that's maybe I could find that in an interview with her somewhere. I don't
It could
know, but
also be like a disconnect between like because she lives there and everything. There's like certain slang or ways that like somebody who's native to that area would use that somebody who's not or like from a different region that like you would not phrase it that way. Because the phrasing, I understood it very well, and I never got mixed up with the directions and everything. But I felt like a lot of the phrasing was very similar to how we give directions in the South. Because like you turn off this country road, and then
Yeah.
like she used landmarks a lot to mark where they were going or where they were heading, and that's very much a like if you go past this like this ruin or you go past this castle and everything, you've gone
Yeah.
too far. Turn around, go left.
I'm
Also,
gonna be honest. I'm like editing right now my story, and I had a line where it's like, "Oh," and then I went off to my right, and I switched that in my story because I was like, "Oh, Violet, what if that's not consistent? What if somebody is like a Michael and really like into the directions?" So I changed it to like, "Oh," then I went to the side because I
Yeah.
was like, I don't want to commit to a left or a right in this situation and then write myself
Oh.
into a corner.
also country roads are weird as again. Going off of American country roads, I don't know if this is how they are in Italy, but in America, country roads are they're just weird as fuck. Literally the same road taking me in the same direction. I have to keep moving my sun visor because every time I go around a thing, the sun is on a different side.
Yeah, because
Mhm.
in
So-
Italy they would also have the Alps as a as an
Yeah,
issue
the
going through
mountain
north.
roads in northern Italy are twisty and like circle back on each other.
Yeah, so it's like the
wild.
sun's on your right now. Well, never mind. You made it. Or you went around a curve.
Right.
It's on your left.
The Italian Alps are some of the prettiest Alps, I gotta say.
I also
So,
live in a mountain region, so maybe that's why I'm in the American equivalent to this little country region. But
yeah, okay, I understand. I think Casey is with you on the feeling of like it was good, but it wasn't like
Well, I mean,
I do agree.
I
they
would
should
say
be-
ultimately
Go back.
it didn't affect like my enjoyment of the book or anything, but it
but
was
you don't
just
like feel
that.
compelled to continue on in the series.
Oh,
what you
so we're
said?
talking about the like in general, like the book. Oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I could finish the series, but I also couldn't.
Yeah, so it's like a take it or leave it. I feel that, okay. I mean, I definitely have a lot of books that I plan
Yeah.
on continuing, but it's like not an urgent thing.
Yeah, there's always that ever-long reading list too.
My life right now, my reading list is just: can I read this thing for a book club by the end of the month? Nope. Okay. Yes. All right. We're good.
I do have to say, I think the audiobook was fantastic. Amazing. The narrator did such a good job with the character voices, and I think that's part of the reason I'm very motivated to continue on in the series is that my library has all of them as audiobooks. So it's like, okay. But I did say also, I felt compelled to want to get a physical copy of this book to see the sentences written out, because I really enjoyed some of the
drawings.
quotes.
They're so pretty.
What cover are you gonna get for your physical copy, Violet?
I don't know. You know what I told myself is like, when I was in Germany, I was like, I'm going to go to the bookstore, whichever one they have. That's the serendipitous one I'm supposed to have. Am I supposed to have the original German? Am I supposed to have the English copy? But they didn't have freaking either of them, so I was like, screw you.
My German copy that I have, I bought when I was in Germany, and honestly, I was not looking for Inkheart. I was looking for the first Reckless book, because I wouldn't say I like Reckless better. I like it in a different way. And at that time, I was feeling more interested in Reckless, so I was like, okay, I want to buy the first book in German, because that's the original language, and they didn't have that, but they had Inkheart, so that's why I bought Inkheart in German. But, like, I mean, I still love it. It's just not what I was looking for.
Yeah, I if I got the physical books in German, that would be kind of a fun thing to read it in German. I think I might end up doing that also, probably because that's probably the copy I'm going to find here as a physical copy, unless I decide to order online, which I might also do at some point. Well, we're just going to see. It's, for me, it's price and timing.
Same.
Yeah, do we have any other closing thoughts? Otherwise, I think we can bring the train into the station for the night.
Who is everyone's favorite character?
I'd have to go, I think, with Pinocchio.
Just this time around, I would probably say Basta, but overall, throughout all the times I've read it, it's definitely Dustfinger.
There you go.
I think I will go with Farid.
Oh, good pick.
With who?
The boy character, Farid.
Oh, Fahid.
So-
Okay.
Oh,
My
sorry.
no, you're fine. My headphone just cut out right when you said a name, so I couldn't even like guess.
I'm not sure how many of the names are the same or different in German. Like some of them are different.
Some of them are different, especially the nicknames.
Yeah.
Interesting.
My favorite was Dustfinger. Ever since he just showed up, and then like I don't know, something about the way he was portrayed, I was like, my feelings for you are going to go one of two ways. You're going to be my favorite, or I'm going to wish a painful death upon you. And he became my favorite. So
Yeah, I also have to say that Dustfinger really, I love me a morally gray Scruffball, and I really liked him, and also Animal Sidekick that brings him up in my book. But Eleanor also had a spot in my heart. So those are
Okay.
my two favorites.
I think I'd say Dustfinger would be my second favorite, just about.
That Animal Sidekick is so cool, and
I love Gwyn.
I just love also scruffy characters like.
I actually really liked, for the short time he was in the book, the Tin Soldier.
Just Tin Soldier, yeah.
I appreciate
agree.
that he seemed self-aware of his ending when Baster was like, "Oh, I said throw him in a fire," and he's like,
Yeah.
Also, Mo was nobody's favorite either. just to throw it out there.
Right.
Mo
I
was
just
a little
want Mo to be my dad.
too
just-
perfect for me. So
I liked and disliked Mo at the same time.
I had a couple of moments where I was not a fan of Mo. Just to
He
Oh,
felt
yeah?
like he fulfilled. Okay, so for me, felt like he was trying to fulfill two different kinds of archetypes, and they didn't blend together in the most endearing of ways, which is fine. So
Yeah, I think I also kind of got him in that trap of being almost like the super squeaky clean parent, like the PSA parent.
yeah, like he's supposed to be like devoted dad, super like everything and stuff, but then also will randomly leave his daughter behind at places, or just like the narrative was trying to tell me something that his actions were not matching up with. And I feel like that could be because a lot of times it was from his daughter's point of view and she was idolizing him a little bit, which may just be masterful writing on Cornelia's part, or maybe she just didn't know how to write a good dad.
I
That
was
too.
thinking there was going to be some turn about why she called him Mo. Like, I kept
Yeah,
thinking
that
that
too.
this
That was just
was
really
going to
weird.
be like a plot thread, like maybe like she was from the book and not his real daughter, or maybe like I had like all these like things like, oh, there's going to be something more to that. And it was just like, no, just Mo's a
That's
cool
just
name and
how
we
it
wanted
is.
to use it.
It's short for his full name, though, isn't it?
Yeah, his name's
Yes.
Mortimer.
Yeah, he just struck me as kind of general and whatnot. He was clear, you could just kind of see through him, and
He was kind of just a man. There wasn't really
yeah, he
anything
didn't.
super interesting.
Yeah,
Like the fact
he
that
didn't
his
really make me think, to be honest.
like I understand that he really loved his wife and that he really wanted her back, but the fact that his daughter felt that he would abandon her to a suicidal mission to go get a singular copy of a book back, like she was genuinely terrified of this. Like, sir, we need to talk about your parenting.
Yeah, the fact that like Capricorn knew like, oh, I have Maggie, like it's a for sure gonna get him to come back. And the fact that Mo was also just, yep, I'm going back 100%, like, and then when he didn't, like Maggie was like kind of upset about it. She's like, I don't want him to come back into danger. But then when he actually didn't, she was like, oh, he actually didn't.
She felt disappointed but unsurprised. And I was like, oh baby.
Okay, but I feel like part of it was also that she was scared that something had happened to him.
Fair point.
There
That's a
was
fair
also
point.
this like little abandonment thing, but she was mostly scared that like
There
there was a reason he hadn't made it.
there was a lot of mixed feelings, like, because she initially starts out as disappointed that he didn't come save her, and then she chastises herself, and she's like, no, like, what if something happened? And so like, and then when Baxter's coming upstairs, she's like, oh, now they're coming to tell me he's dead. And then she felt guilty for initially being disappointed that he hadn't come gotten her, which I felt was very realistic, like kid feels.
Yeah, that's true. It you can kind of follow her thought process. That makes sense. That's true. But still, yeah, I think I would just like to say thank you to my co-hosts for showing up and participating in the book club this month. It was a pleasure as always, and also want to thank everybody who voted for this on the forum, because I'm happy to have read it. And
I am too.
brought it into the little Nostalgia Train family that we have going. Like, I keep thinking like where the book club is going to go, and like all of a sudden we have like this library of literature that we've consumed. So this was definitely a fun one. I hope to see anybody around for upcoming stops this year and beyond. And yeah, that's going to be it. Would my co-host like to introduce or promo anything before we say goodbye?
Well, I will just say that the 30-hour write-a-thons, thank you, coming up this coming weekend. That's run by Arthur and Sophie and Celeste Joan also. Yeah. So that's going to be, this coming weekend.
I have a Let's Talk About the 13th Year, a very nostalgic mer film for me, on Monday. And you can just, if you go to my website, samanthaalnasset.com, that's all of the me stuff. You can find it all there.
Score.
I don't have anything to promo. I'm on hiatus from YouTube for a little bit.
And my channel's in the description, but I'm pretty sure everyone in the chat already knows that, so.
Marta, you're forgetting the replay. Everybody's going to replay this when I make the thumbnail Brendan Fraser.
It's been
You're
finished
right.
as my bedtime pilot. I don't need to promo myself.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. We've gone past Marta's
No, that's
bedtime.
okay.
We're going to roll the outro. Where is the button? Thank you, everybody, so much for coming. We're going to cut off the music, not to annoy Michael. And see ya. Bye.
Stand well back from the platform edge. The next train is platform 5 does not stop here.